Welcome back, ladies and germs, to another Glenbonium podcast here. And today I actually got a really fascinating subject I wanted to touch over. I don't really have a name for it, but I guess I can start with a story. So let's say you have a favorite program on TV. It's probably critically acclaimed, but then after one or two seasons, it gets canceled. And you probably think to yourself, why did my favorite show get canceled? I guess I'm more leaning along the lines of cartoons, because here I'm an animation major, or I was an animation major, and I watched a lot of cartoons. I kind of still do, but not like the bouncy kiddie stuff. I'm talking about like comic book related. I actually still watch Dragon Ball. Because Dragon Ball Super is out now, and because I grew up with the Dragon Ball franchise, I want to see what happens next. It's like people who watch their favorite soap operas or their crime dramas. For me, it's Dragon Ball, or just anything DC Universe. I don't really care much of Marvel these days. I mean, the Avengers movies is good, but like I kind of grew out of the whole Marvel universe. I still kind of follow Spider-Man very, very rarely. I don't know what it is. Like when I was much younger, like I couldn't get enough of X-Men, and I didn't really care much for Batman. Then as I got much older, that reversed, where I started watching a lot more DC stuff and a lot less Marvel. And I guess my reason for the Marvel is because it really is corny. It really is campy. Like I was a big fan of Wolverine, except for that whole feral phase that he went through in the 90s. I never knew what that was until I looked it up. Like, I always wondered why Wolverine had, like, all this facial hair and no nose. I thought that's 90s was a weird time for comic books. And not only that, Superman went through this weird phase. He died, he lost his mullet, but then he gained electrical powers for a while. And then everyone hated that, so that lasted a few months, and then he got back to normal. And he was also immune to kryptonite, too, which was crazy. But 90s was this weird, grungy, experimental phase with a lot of mediums. Batman was no different. Although Batman Beyond wasn't too bad. I liked it. Anyway, the point I'm getting is there is a very simple reason why a lot of these shows don't get renewed. And it's really simple. And it has to do with marketing, merchandising. Remember that part in Spaceballs where they kind of go off the deep end there, not deep end, but they break the fourth wall and they talk about all the Spaceballs merchandise. Do you ever wonder why we don't get a sequel? Probably because they didn't sell enough merchandise. I mean, when you think about it, look at Disney. Look at Disney or Pixar. Any movie they push out, they market the crap out of it, and it doesn't matter what critics say. Because here's the thing: as much as many critics think that their word has some sort of power, it's really how much money gets spent on crap that they peddle with the merchandise. So even though people are sick to death of those minions, the little talking Twinkies that spout gibberish that your 3 to 4 year olds probably jump up and down, well, they're going to make more of those movies because kids love them. People buy the merchandise. And same thing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I loved Ninja Turtles back in the day. Of course, growing up as a geek in the 80s and 90s is basically a death sentence for your social life, because people will make fun of you for liking something that you're not supposed to like past a certain age, because people are dicks, excuse my language. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was big. But of course, it got really stupid towards the end of the 80s cartoon, because the 80s cartoon kind of ruled. It was late 80s, early 90s, and they finally started getting to like really stupid ideas like Toon Turtles, Clown Party Turtles, and then the cartoon. I remember like one of the seasons they introduced this like Woody Allen looking dude who was a friend of Irma's, and all he would play on the piano, and he had like this doo-wop thing going on. Doo-wop is like a kind of I don't know what kind of brand of music it's called, but this is before the whole Zoot Suit resurgence in the 90s was. But anyway, yeah, this guy would play piano, and why the heck was this guy there? Why was this guy there? It was so weird. I call him Woody. I don't remember his name, but he was like a Woody Allen wannabe. Like a Jewish stereotype of the worrywart, meek, small Jewish guy, but he wants to be big on Broadway, and he was in a few Turtle episodes, and I don't understand. Oh, and they had the Easter Bunny in one of the cartoons. Don't ask why, but apparently the Easter Bunny was a TMNT character. Like I'm kind of glad I phased out. I mean, I was early teens when TMNT was starting to get stale, so I was glad I started gravitating towards Gargoyles. Um, because and oh, speaking of which, Gargoyles, that was another show that it was dark, it was gritty, it had a lot of really interesting plot lines, but then it after two long seasons, they went to ABC called the Goliath Chronicles, and they were kind of like little short stories, 3-minute episodes, and they weren't as good. Then they canceled it outright because I also found out later on that the merchandise of Gargoyles, not just the toys, but all the other merchandise, didn't sell very well. But for some reason, Darkwing Duck did good. Um, Darkwing Duck did good, and there was another one, Mighty Ducks. Oh my god, Disney really tried to push the Mighty Ducks. Like the Mighty Ducks went through 3 movies and a cartoon series, which made no sense, and I didn't quite care for it either. But they pushed it. But apparently, Mighty Ducks merchandise sold a boatload of money, or yeah, made a boatload of money. So that's probably why they got so much. But at the same time, like a lot of marketers don't want to push something that they deem was unworthy. So and there's another cartoon I think a friend of mine liked called Exo Squad. That was a show where you had these. It was like military political intrigue where these guys get in exosuits and they fight. But there was a lot of talking going on. I remember that cartoon, but I only watched a couple episodes. It wasn't for me, but there was a lot of talking, a lot of intrigue, and my young mind didn't care for that stuff. I wanted to see the action, and I remember seeing the toys in stores, but they never moved. Like I remember distinctly that these toys were always there; they never moved. And then, this is years later when I got to my late 20s. I did some research online, and Exo Squad didn't sell a lot of toys. And I always wondered like how come all my favorite shows keep getting canceled. I get into something, and it's not just cartoons; it's TV shows too. Um, I'm sure there are TV shows and even movies where. Do you ever wonder why we have so much superhero movies now? Because superhero movies make money. Because see, superhero movies, you can take your kids to see it, but there's a lot of stuff for grown-ups, mostly sexual innuendos and corny soap opera relationships. And it's funny, going back to cartoons again, Young Justice, I read that there was a large female demographic for that show. And I can kind of see why, because the way they drew the male characters and like everybody was in a relationship. It wasn't so much a superhero show, it was more like who's dating who's screwing who. You know? And so you go on like YouTube or DeviantArt and you see like all this fan art of like Superboy and the female Martian lady, or you see Nightwing as Zatanna. And oh, by the way, yeah, it's gonna be. This is one of those episodes where only nerds actually know this kind of stuff. So if you're looking for like jobs and learning about jobs or learning about college, this isn't a video for that. It is what it is. Anyway, back on track. Um, and it got me thinking, like over the years, like I used to draw lots and lots and lots and lots of characters. I actually had an old childhood ambition to basically create a franchise, to use my art to create a franchise that would be very marketable, and basically I'd have a good shot of being set for life, or not set for life, but just make some good returns out of it. But see, I never really knew how to do this. Like I struggled with this for a long time because see, no one is gonna ever sit down and tell you how it works. But when I read all these stories about how these people found success, it never really sunk in until maybe a couple years ago when I was still doing my whole indie game venture, which we'll probably do another video about that. Um, and I actually learned a lot. You know how like Batman got popular because it's funny. Batman wasn't even that popular until the '60s, and it's crazy. Even somebody like the Joker was meant to be a one-off comic book villain back in the '40s or '50s, and I think there was actually a period of time where Joker wasn't even. I think there was like a decade in around the '70s where Joker wasn't even heard of. Because Joker in the old comics, he was just a corny villain with over the top schemes, and he never really killed anybody. And then when he came back, he started becoming this mass murdering psychopath who just laughs at everything. And that's the Joker that we know now. That's the incarnation that's here to stay. Um, Penguin is another one. Like a lot of the Batman villains, all the way up until the Tim Burton movies, like they were corny. Like the Silver Age Batman was like he was. It took the Adam West costume and just kind of made it dark, and then somewhere around the '90s, they said no, it's not dark enough. Kids aren't getting into comics, so they made him black, made costume black, and he was brooding, and then villains were just killing people for shits and giggles, and then thanks to the Tim Burton movies, it really took off because the '60s Batman movies. It was pure cheese. It was I mean, it's comedy gold and it's classic. But like I remember the '90s, like people scoffed at the Adam West Batman. They were like, "This is such cheesy. Batman's for this is stupid." Even kids didn't like the '60s Batman. I mean, there's a lot of respect for it now, especially now that Adam West has passed away. God rest his soul. Um, there's a lot of respect for it now. But I remember actually growing up in the '90s, like we actually owned the VHS copy of the '60s Batman movie, and it was one of my favorites because it was just the corny acting, because they really stayed true to the source material, even though it was just goofy. It was one of those movies that if you want a really good laugh, you watch it. You watch that movie, and it, well, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but anyway, the point I'm making is marketing plays a very huge part on if your franchise lives or your franchise dies. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles actually was close twice to not even ever being made because and the second thing is it's sad, but a lot of these executive types, they're pretty much the gatekeepers of if your intellectual property becomes successful or not, which kind of sucks. I mean, it's not so bad now because the internet, you can pretty much put something out there, and if you gain a following, then those executive types will come down and say, "Hey, we would like to market this to blah 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 blah." And then that opens up another can of worms because you got to be very careful because you might have an intellectual property, but you're literally signing your life over to a bunch of people who don't really care about you. They just care about how much money this property is going to be worth, how much money they're going to make. It's sort of like how manga authors got to deal with it in Japan. Like the guy who does Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama, there's a lot of executive meddling. A lot of editors come in and say, actually tell you what you can and cannot do with your own intellectual property. They say, oh, even though it's your story, it's your comic, you want to do what you want with it, which story, you still have people that will tell you, that's no good, that's no good, that's no good, that's no good, that's no good. Okay, let's keep this in. But change this. Oh my god, that's probably one of the most frustrating things as being an artist. I did webcomics back in the aughts, and I remember one of the most frustrating things is like you want to do something. Like I joined a comic community. I had a great run. But there were some moments in the beginning where I thought maybe I made a bad decision because there were some things that I did that I wanted to go through, and I would be told, no, that's stupid. Why are you doing that? That's stupid. Or he's like, I don't know. I don't think that's going to be good. The gags don't make sense. No, 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 no. And yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a bit of ignorance on my part because I thought, oh, it might be funny, or it might be a little too disgusting. Or sometimes I'll get told, well, don't use this character. He's too popular. It's like, what? He's like, yeah, it's so many different variables. I mean, in the end, I mean, I gained a pretty decent following out of it. But I wanted to branch out and do something else. But of course, that comic kind of failed spectacularly because what it is, I wasn't that good of an artist. Like I wanted to do like a full color manga, and then the character designs were just stupid. Like I was looking at my old web comic, and I'm like, wow, these character designs I thought were so freaking rad. I look at it now, it's like, wow, a sleeveless blazer and a sword. It's like it takes place in a city, but the guy looks like he's a JRPG. The character was like a wannabe JRPG hero in a large futuristic city who occasionally wields a sword that he may or may not use depending on a situation, which he only used like once, and a ninja who wore brightly colored clothes. Oh my god! Again, I got inspired by a little too much anime back in the day. I'm kind of glad I'm away from that, but but I didn't understand. But I kind of expected this to start taking off, and it didn't because I didn't market it. Basically, even if I did market it, it probably wouldn't do so well anyway because people are going to nitpick and complain and complain and complain. You're ripping off the KO can attack, or your drawings are stupid, or this is taking too long because I had an arc where they're fighting a huge steroid-induced megalomaniac, which lasted a lot longer than it should. But I went through a phase growing up where I hated the bully mentality. The strong should always survive. So I made this character that I wanted to hate so much that I thought everybody else would hate him just the same. But it was more like I was really dragging this out. And then I started not updating as much. And then I eventually gave up altogether right before the climax. And then I never went back to it. I pretty much turned my website to a resume because I was dying to get into the game industry. I wanted to get out of my little crappy town with crappy jobs, and that never worked out either. And I mean, it was a hard lesson to learn that as I felt more like a failed artist. Um, my artwork wasn't good. I didn't put a lot of polish into my artwork like I thought I did. And it's weird. Like I look back at a lot of my old artwork, and I actually start to cringe. Like I thought this was good. I thought this was good because I know back then when I was still in college, I thought it was awesome. Like I got better, but at the same time, I could improve, but I didn't. And this is once again like I played a lot of video games and I watched a lot of anime in my early 20s, and it really had a lot of influence on what my stuff looked like, which was very detrimental because now I'm getting more into like Western style art and animation, a lot of comic books, and then I have a style that I haven't been putting on the internet, but now like my characters look more akin to DC comic book characters instead of wannabe JRPG Dragon Ball ripoffs. Um, which that's a positive step in my opinion, but there's still so much more. Unfortunately, like a lot of stuff has changed on how artists create their art. Now everything's done digitally. I have a Wacom drawing tablet from like 2004 that barely functions, and thanks to student loan debt and all this other real life responsibilities, they actually have tablets where it's actually like a monitor, and you can get like Photoshop installed, and you can draw on the monitor, something that never existed 10 years ago. And there are and they're getting cheaper. I'm hoping one day where I do come into some money, I want to buy a decent little computer tablet so I can draw and color and illustrate. So I don't have to do scan lines and color. Because what I used to do, I used to draw on paper, scan it in, clean up the lines, and then color it, word bubble it. And one page would take literally hours, literally hours. And the worst part was like when I would get in on Photoshop, like the line art wouldn't be clean. Like there's all these techniques you can do in Photoshop, but at the end of the day, because Photoshop is a raster program, if there was a vector art program, your lines would be a lot cleaner. But aren't a lot of vector programs on for commercial use because a lot of professional animators now they use vector programs. Sometimes some of it's Flash or Creative Suite, but Creative Suite it's more of an animation program. Whereas Photoshop, if you want to draw concept art, you technically use Photoshop or a vector art program to do it. Um, but I wouldn't mind getting back in. But here's the thing: the point that I'm getting to in this video is now that I've realized where I messed up and why things didn't happen the way it is, I want to get back into it. Um, and I've been sitting here doing some sketches, doing some drawings, but my biggest problem is I do not have a solid foundation of what I want to do. Like I want to reboot one of my old webcomics. I do want to give it a reboot because I had this whole story planned out, but once again, I was influenced by way too much games and way too much anime. And instead of building my own world, I borrowed ideas from all these other sources and tried to mash it together, and the whole thing just did not make sense. It just kind of fell apart. But the story and the choreography were still there. Um, but I had an idea of a character that, I don't know. He's not a ninja. I'm not. I hate to say this, but he's not much of a ninja. But and see, this idea now I got to change because I never really cared much for Green Lantern until I started getting to the lore. Because the character actually finds a ring, or puts it on. It's like, oh great, now he's Green Lantern. So now I got to change that idea. But he has these abilities where he can create like little kunais out of energy, but it's only when he's in the suit. And I have to make the suit not look like spandex because now you ever notice that the DC movies, like even in the comics, superheroes wear spandex, but you cannot translate spandex into the big screen. So you have what plated armor. Even the Flash has plated armor. Nah, I mean it is what it is because it would look kind of goofy if you're walking around in spandex. I mean, let's just be real. Comics, if you try to modernize comic books, it just will not make sense. Especially your average moviegoer doesn't like to look at people wearing stupid costumes unless it takes place in 18th century or Old English or World War II. But most of the time, if they see like they tried with the Superman movie back in 2008. I don't remember that. It was not the Christopher Reeve. It was that new one, and it was how Superman was all mopey and whiny, and they tried to do the old Superman suit, and they just basically took Christopher Reeve suit and just like darkened it, because grim and gritty. Oh, anyway, so I had this idea, but I'm trying to get this idea off the ground. It's going to take a lot of back and forth because I kind of want to take place in a city, but at the same time, it feels like if I make it too modern, it restricts creativity. Whereas if I made it into a more fantasy-ish, then I start to lose people. Maybe I'm thinking of this the wrong way. Like The Last of Us, the game on PS4, PS3, PS4. I kind of want to do something like that where it's not quite post-apocalyptic. It's like after, like, because like let's say post-apocalyptic, everything is gone to shit. Cities are in ruins. If you've seen like Fist of the North Star or Mad Max, where people like all the checks and balances and all that stuff doesn't exist. It's a bartering system, but you have clans now. You still do unfortunately have religion, but you also got clans and you got like criminals running wild. Or you could have it where, man and machine went to war, destroyed the world, and then you still got some feral machines. But yeah, I know feral machines doesn't make sense, but it's just, machines that go rogue and they'll kill on sight. And you got one person going out there. It starts out, but then you got to build this whole lore. And then once your story becomes more about the lore and not about the characters, and you lose your people. You got to be very, very careful when you build your world. You want to focus on the characters and not the lore first. And that's where the problem I run into. Um, I I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm still trying to figure this out. But the whole point I'm making is I think if I make this whole new franchise marketable, I have to make sure I get a patent first. Um, because you got to be very careful when you let people borrow your franchise. Like I've heard stories of people who created a franchise, but then eventually the executives started owning more and more and more and more and more of the property until at some point they sue the original creator and they take all the rights. I don't. Well, I'm trying to remember what a property that is, but it was a pretty bad deal because the guy didn't get a patent, and then even though he tried to get a lawyer, like the executives got lawyers that write this stuff up. So it's such a crappy business too, because they try to make it say, well, we're making you famous, you owe us, and then they eventually take that reins away from you. But you got to be careful. Like going back to the TMNT story, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started out as a joke, as just a mere concept. It started as a mere piece of concept art of four turtles with same colored headbands. This is before marketers got a hold of it. Same colored headbands, and the old Turtles comic was actually really gritty and really violent. And at first, they got rejected maybe twice. And then some editors showed interest, and then eventually they said, okay, we decided to turn to a franchise. Now, see, the cool part is, even though they still made the old comic, I think the old comic ended at some point, and Archie kind of got the reins and started doing Turtle comics, and then that's how we got the '80s cartoon. I think the comic came before the cartoon, or maybe the cartoon came before the comic. I don't remember which. Um, but these guys are living off the royalties. And I've actually sat through three incarnations because 2003 they had a bit of a reboot because I think in the early 90s like TMNT kind of ran its course because it got kind of silly with the whole space alien thing. And in 2003 it kind of suffered the same fate because the executives decide, okay, well, let's put the turtles in the future and then let's bring the turtles back from the future. And then now Nickelodeon they got a hold of teams and Ninja Turtles, and even though it's critically acclaimed, like they're starting to go through the whole sci-fi space age stuff. I guess it's par for the course. Um, but I figured this is something I wanted to do for a long time, but I never knew how to do it until now, and I finally got all the pieces put together. Because I grew up around not a lot of smart people. If it weren't for the internet, I probably wouldn't still know what to do to this day. But I do want to create a franchise that's actually marketable. I want to create. I want to create something that can sell action figures, shirts, video games. Instead of actually doing all that stuff myself, I can just come up with the foundation and then just live off the royalties. And I know I know it's kind of a weird thing to say because a lot of fans don't like it when the creators already talk about selling out. I still want to have creative control. I want to, still be like George Lucas before he sold Star Wars. I still want to have creative control. I'm not gonna, and that's kind of the cool thing about DC is like even though the creators of Batman, well, I think he long passed away. I think I don't know. Bob Kane's still alive, but anyway, the distant family. I mean, the people can do whatever they want with the property, and there's really no hint of canon because you got the Bruce Timm universe, you got the cinematic universe, you got the Lego universe, you got the Justice universe, you got the Arkham universe, but Batman's still Batman. That's it is what it is. So you come up with a concept, and then you can let the executives and the writers go nuts as long as they try to stay to the source material, which is actually really cool. So I think this is something I'm gonna work on. And probably in the next few weeks, next few months, I'll see what happens. I mean, I'll have to work with the little equipment that I got now. But I know he's like, you're creating a franchise just to sell out. You're just a soulless corporate money grab. No, 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 son, or girl, whoever's watching this, the world doesn't work with the ideals of fandom in mind. This is the problem that I struggled with a long time because I was just like you guys. I didn't like the idea of your favorite artists selling out because when you think about it, every creative franchise you see right now has sold out at some point. Even the least favorite popular shows have sold out at some point. This is the environment. This is what it takes. Artists, musicians, actors, actresses, even models, even people on the internet that started out with a few subscribers, eventually sold out. You'd be surprised. A lot of those popular YouTubers that you see have sold out. They still have creative material, but they have sponsors. They sign on the dotted line and get sponsors and get paid very handsomely to hawk their products. This is why we have commercials. Because you know what pays for your favorite shows? Sponsors. You know what pays for favorite movie? Sponsors. Super Bowl. People pay good money to have ad revenue or to have ad space on the biggest game in history. So are you gonna? Athletes sponsor products. They get paid. They don't just get paid to do sports, but people like say deodorant can pay these guys to hawk their products. It is what it is. This is the adult life when it comes to creating a property. And I know in fandoms, I was a total fanboy back in the day. I did not want to even believe the fact that my favorite properties are just sellouts. No, they're creating stuff to entertain. That's true. They are creating stuff to entertain. But at the same time, it's the creator. You are not entitled to the creator's whims and whimsy. Like, especially in the shipper culture, like, if you see one character get with another character, but you wanted that character to get with this character, that is not your call to make. I know a lot of fans will hate it. They'll scream to the top of their lungs and hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it, because I was guilty of this for a long freaking time. But no, I have learned that I have finally learned how all this is put together. And yeah, it made me very, very, very depressed. I think I learned a lot of this like right around the time I turned 30. Because I started gravitating away from being the nerd fan who only wanted things to cater to me, and I was always wondering why is this not working? Why is this show getting canceled? It's like, why are my artworks not making me money? Why? Then when I found a decision, I'm like, wow, everybody's a sellout. So I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop liking these things because I think they're a sellout. But then I was being stupid, ridiculously stupid. I found some mentors online who were willing to educate me through every step of the way. And even though I listened to all their advice, I still had 20-year-old me trying to tell me what to do instead of what I am now. And then once I think it was about 32, 33 when I realized, okay, I need to stop and just focus on creating something that will, you know, turn my life around for the better, is what I'm getting at. So anyway, this video is drawn on long enough. Let's see, what do I got here? 31 minutes. Dang, half-hour video. And I know I haven't done these in a while. I've been busy. I just turned 37 last week. I wanted to settling into my new apartment. And, I'm actually doing some concept art all week. So, that's another reason why you haven't heard from me. I don't get much time during work. I log into Final Fantasy, but then I leave my character AFK so I can kind of get some concept ideas. I know. I just kind of there's a good reason. There's a good reason. I'm contradicting myself here, but there's a good reason. Because one of my character designs is inspired just by the character I created, not the outfit, but the character I created. Because this is my way of getting ideas. But of course, this also gives me the conflict where do I want to do fantasy world, or do I want to do, modern city, or do I want to try to blend them in together, kind of like Fallout ish. Anyway, I'm gonna end this video here, and if you like what I had to say, or you disagree, leave a comment down below. Like, fave, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next time. Take care, everyone.